People who worked in restaurants. What was the worst customer that you had to deal with? I worked in Domino's. I had a guy throw a handful of pennies at me while laughing. The 30 odd cents was my tip. He was mad when I turned around and walked away without picking any of them up. His exact words were, "Oh, my money is not good enough for you? Fine, I'll never order Domino's again." I've never had a customer fire themselves like that before. It was great. I love when the "I'll never come back" threat comes out. Like, you think my salary is at all affected by you coming in? Please never come back. It's one less person to yell at me. Barista here had a guy that regularly came in and ordered a complicated drink. He always finished the order by asking for a finger swirl in the drink. If you gave him a confused look, he would say, "Well, how else am I gonna taste you?" He was the worst. Oh god, I had a similar dude when I was in college. Said to me to stick my finger into the beer bottle so he could taste something sweet, mayo. I used to work in a bar that sold very old booze. A drunk man tried to impress his friends by chugging from a bottle of Mero from the early 60s. He had to pay for the whole thing since his lips touched it and it was useless. Cost him around $800. Had he poured it into his mouth, would he have loopholed out of this? Worked in a popular restaurant for a while. We usually have quite a long wait, 30-40 minutes waits during dinner service, and people are told by the hosts about this. There was this lady that got fed up with the wait after 10 minutes. She stormed into the restaurant, stood next to a table of 4 people and literally asked them, "Are you guys done? We've been waiting for a long time now and would like to have the table if you guys are just chatting." Was completely mind blown how people are able to not give a fuck and pull something like this in public. Way back in the 80s, I worked in a restaurant that was a favorite of a celebrity chef of those days, Jeff Smith, the frugal gourmet. Never seen a bigger shat than that guy. Literally make our servers cry. Nothing was ever right. He was beyond rude and condescending, yet he kept coming back. He had a reputation of being a jerk off camera. Eventually he was disgraced by being outed as a child predator and was quickly forgotten by all. Our restaurant was a good place. Another celebrity chef of the time, Graham Kerr, the galloping gourmet, was always a pleasure to have visit. In his day, Graham Kerr had the energy level of Gordon Ramsay, the health consciousness of Paula Deen, and the gleeful euphoria of man well acquainted with ecstasy. He was fun to watch. Work in a place that is frequented by local families and youth sports teams. On Sundays, this one large group of people always come in, and they are the worst. The parents drink and ignore their preteens who run around playing games in the entire restaurant, disrupting everyone else. They have tried to walk in a party of 45 during end of year sports party season when we are booked solid and get mad that there isn't enough space for them. And they modify everything like crazy and leave 0 in a tip. It's at least once a month the entire group comes in, and weekly for some of the individual families. Edit. Wow, thanks for the upvotes. Been a rough time, like unbelievably, and this oddly helped. Also, I'm not a server. I'm a cook who happens to take orders, pour beer, run food, clear tables, and do dishes. But primarily I cook. This is the reason many restaurants have an automatic gratuity on parties above a certain size. One large party can steal a server's entire evening, and having them not tip is painful. This guy threw a beer in my face when I stuck up for myself and told him to stop banging his fist on the bar and screaming back, quote, "Yo." To get my attention, I had a guy literally spit on me for the same reason. I was working at one of the busiest bars in a major city in the Midwest, and this fuckstick can't stop pounding his empty glass on the bar, rolling his eyes, and yelling, "I'm empty over here." It was 11 on a Saturday night and the bar was packed. Literal line around the block. I told him I would get to him as quickly as I could, and not 20 seconds later I hear him slamming one of my fucking glasses on the bar again. I lean over the bar to tell him if he can stop abusing my glassware. I'm giving him a plastic cup. Douche canoe proceeds to spit in my fucking face. I was honestly shocked. One of my regulars grabbed him by the back of his head and slammed his face into the bar. Fight breaks out. At least 20 of my glasses ended up broken. A homeless guy who came in actively dripping of blood from his hands, and started screaming at me and threatening me because I wouldn't give him a bakery case item without him paying. He was dripping blood all over the counter and spitting everywhere until I threatened to call the cops. A huge group of clearly rich kids who came in, stole a bunch of drinks, and left the dining room trashed. A guy who *DEMANDED* I take money from our tip jar to help him pay for his order and argued with me when I said no. People who would place large orders or even take home a cake and eat half of it, then flip their shit and demand a refund when they'd find out it was all vegan, even though that fact was well advertised. That first guy was a huge biohazard, and I absolutely would have called the cops and made my manager deal with him. After a wedding reception ended at our facility, we were cleaning, and I began the cleaning process on our espresso machine. The party was over almost a half hour already. The process takes 12 minutes. People were still there as the party slowly let out, and the father of the bride asks me for an espresso. I told him I could get it to him, as we have a strict policy of always trying to satisfy our guests' needs, but the machine was cleaning, and it would be done in about 10 minutes. He begins ranting about how much he paid for the wedding, and stormed to our banquets manager, and told them I refused to make it for him. Manager is at bag and starts ripping me in front of the guy. I show both of them that the machine is just finishing the cleaning process, and it was impossible to make it beforehand. I got suspended for 2 weeks. Oof. Hope you're out of there. Fuck both of those turds. Our bar was having a private party. A drunk dude walks in and orders a drink. I knew he wasn't with the party based on his attire and that he came in every so often. I told him I couldn't get him a drink. He lost his mind, told me to fuck off, and then wanted to fight me. On his way out he yelled that we should put up signs as he walked by the signs on the door saying we were closed for a private event. He came in the next day sober and apologized. Hey, at least he apologized. Bartending in a restaurant a few years ago. There was a private party and one of the guests asked me to plug in his iPhone to listen to a song. No big deal. I did it and he tipped me $20. He left his phone behind the bar and got wasted. When he was leaving I said, "Sir, don't forget about your phone." He threw a beer on me and told me to leave him the fuck alone and told me get a real job. Guess who got to keep a nice new iPhone? We had someone do a runner once and they left their phone. Reasonably expensive one, although this was over 10 years ago, so I can't remember if they were as much as they are now. He sheepishly came back the next day asking if one had been handed in. Our boss said no and kept the phone. A customer ordered one of our daily specials and didn't like it, so instead of complaining to me about the food and letting me offer something else, she complained to my manager about me. This was May of last year. In August of last year, turns out she was one of my college professors for the semester, teaching a management course. She recognized me the first day, but I played it off like I didn't know her. Edit. She did not complain about me to my manager in front of me. I left to go work an event in a different building, and she left a sticky note for me after talking to my boss. I don't know what the sticky note said, since I didn't bother to read it. I had a similar experience. I served a couple once, and we got along really well. No complaints about anything. I ran the guy's card and it declined. I told my manager, and when he went to talk to them, they told him that I was a horrible server and treated them like shit. They left me a penny. Fast food near a high school. The absolute worst were the moms. Had one who came in weekly and screamed about wrong orders or whatever complaint she could dream up so she could get free food for her entire family. Then you get the loser douches who think harassing employees is funny. The absolute worst customer was the owner of the franchise. He'd walk in, test employees and then fire someone for some issue so minor it was likely just made up. I worked at a chain restaurant at one point and our douche of a regional manager would come in and do this. He never had people fired, he would just grade you on our pushing of the new menu items and overall knowledge of the menu. It was super cringe inducing. I fucking hated that job. I used to manage a restaurant and hated those couple of times in 5 years of my working there when some entitled customers left without paying because the waitresses didn't come to pick up my money. That's a piece of shit move and a poor excuse when all you need is to grab a waitress's attention by simply talking. Once it was a family of 4 who left the restaurant during a busy evening and we realized that the bill wasn't paid after some 10 minutes had passed. I checked the cameras and saw the father taking the bill, putting the money in, sitting there for just 3 to 4 minutes, looking around and taking the money back and leaving with the whole family. Lucky our owner was a great guy and told me to simply ban the fucker and his family. And to my surprise, that piece of shit came back with friends on a busy evening in a couple of months. I was very excited watching his face being embarrassed in front of his friends and customers sitting outside when I told him that he is banned, and when his wife started to get upset I told them I remembered them and told them the whole story with me checking the cameras and seeing him taking the money back and all. Had a man and his wife come in during a really busy lunch rush. He was rude off the bat, interrupting me, not wanting to listen to me speak, whatever, it happens all the time. He was very adamant that he wanted both chips and salsa and a plate of roasted wings as appetizers. He kept emphasizing that he wanted them together before they ordered their lunch. Even though chips and salsa only take a minute and wings take about 12, I rang them in together because of how he ordered them. In hindsight, I should have made completely sure, but not 3 minutes later, the man is waving at my coworker across the restaurant, yelling at her about how they've been there for 30 minutes and his appetizer is taking too long, and he wants it before his wings. I was at a party table, so she ran back and grabbed the chips and the wings which were somehow up as well, and brought them out. He took one bite of a wing and tossed the plate like a frisbee across the table towards her and started complaining about them being cold. I rush over to see what's going on, and he starts yelling at me, saying his food is awful and this is the worst service he's ever gotten in his life. I don't do well with grown men yelling at me, so I went to the kitchen and my manager went out and thankfully had my back as much as he could, and made the guy pay for the wings and the chips and then leave. After he left, I started to clean the table, where I found the single penny he tipped me with, that my coworker promptly threw in the trash, and got a call from my general manager asking why a man had called me professionally challenged on Yelp. My friend works at restaurant. A vlogger was shooting a video, and since it was allowed within the place nobody troubled her. Apparently she wanted one of those gone sexual clickbait thumbnails, so she asked my friend to place his face in her breast while she squirted ketchup on herself. My friend refused as he was in a relationship, but some other employee agreed to do so. After they shot the thumbnail, she marched in the next day claiming sexual assault. I don't know what happened after that, but it did not turn out good for the liar. I hate the vlogger already, and I don't know them. They had me at the word vlogger. I worked at a bakery for 2 years, and I had to deal with honestly the most innocent rude customers ever. I've worked in the food service industry my whole life, and lived in Toronto up until 3 years ago, and I have never dealt with such entitlement. Anyways, one day one of our staff members quit by text message 5 minutes before her shift, and 30 minutes before we were set to open at 8 AM on a Saturday. We were hard pressed finding someone to cover, so I was alone until a front of house person was able to come in. About an hour later, I had one of the kitchen staff helping me, and all they could do was grab things and bag them as they weren't trained on cash or coffee. So here I'm running around trying to help customers, make coffees, ring people through, and clearly stressed. This douche bag man was clearly annoyed that he had to wait, huffing and puffing, and eventually loudly exclaimed "fuck this, I'm not fucking waiting for this shit," and proceeded to throw his bagged muffin at my head and storm out. I legit almost chased him down. I was livid. Customers are shit lol. I've told this one before, but long story short, my buddy was 16 and got his first job at McDonald's in the food court at the mall. His third day of work was Black Friday, and he was put on a cash register. There were 3 registers open, line well over 50 deep at each register, stretched across the mall. Some swipe gets to the front and starts talking shit about the wait. My buddy closes a register, hops over the counter, and tells everyone in line to fuck off. Karens in the middle of the line were proclaiming you can't do that. People are such assholes. Any table that mentioned the tip at all. Don't worry, we tip well. If you do X, we'll tip big. We'll take care of you. Holding the tip over my head doesn't get you better service. You get the same everyone else does. They were always pretentious and rude, and never tipped well. This old guy who asked if I was included in the order. I'm 17. This happened to me when I was about that age. Some guy asked if I was on the dessert menu. I pretended so hard not to understand him that he actually got embarrassed, left a generous tip, and politely left without another word. This is actually the best way to handle someone being inappropriate. Make them explain their shittiness. Works with casual racism, sexism, etc. I worked at a Vietnamese restaurant back in high school, and I had a Viet family come in to eat. They gave me snobby vibe the entire time, especially after I told them I couldn't speak Vietnamese. They ordered regular pho, but asked for no cilantro, so I rang the order in with no cilantro. It came out with cilantro in it, and I told the kitchen what the family asked. The kitchen told me they couldn't do anything about it, so I told my manager, and they told me to ask the family if they still wanted it. Family said yes, so I brought it out, and they took out the cilantro and ate the entire thing. At the end of the meal they spoke to the owner and complained how I got their order completely wrong, got the food for free, and got their bill taken out of my pay. The owner told me I should remove the cilantro myself. Shitty management, shitty customer. Edit. I was not angry that the customer ordered no cilantro. I was upset at the fact that they abused their rights by asking not to pay for their food when they clearly ate everything. Also, it's been a few years, haha. That's illegal, you know they can't do that. Fuck that place, I hope it closes for good. Used to be a bartender at this hybrid restaurant slash bar slash movie theater. On big movie releases, the bar would get absolutely slammed, and on this particular night we had run out of glassware completely. People were allowed to take their drinks into the theater with them. The only glassware I had at the time were regular pint glasses that you would normally serve water in. We only served beer in them in a pinch. This guy and his wife slash GF got lucky and caught a seat at the bar, and he ordered a Jack Daniels neat. Having no other glassware, I put it in a pint glass and explained that we were running low on rocks glasses, assuming he would understand, since it was absolute chaos everywhere you looked. He took it and said I'm not very happy in a smarmy way and gave this shitty little grin. I apologized again and said unfortunately we are not making any more glasses back here, and him and his wife acted like I reached across the bar and slapped him. I just got my manager and told him to deal with them. He told them the same thing I had told them regarding the lack of glassware and gave them a free drink, which they seemed happy with. I felt bad if there was something else I could have done for them, but there wasn't, so fuck that guy. He said I'm not very happy and smiled. He wanted a free drink, which he got. I waited tables for a few years in college, and the worst table that I ever had was a Catholic priest and some guy he was trying to hit up for donations. The whole meal he was very condescending and demanding. After everything was done, I left the check at the table. He ended up walking out stiffing me, not just on the tip, but on the entire check. He even stole the leather check holder thing. I reported this to my manager. A couple weeks later, this same guy comes in with about 20 members of his congregation. My manager told him he wasn't welcome in our restaurant after walking out on his previous tab in front of his whole party. They all ended up leaving to go elsewhere. Best manager I've ever had. Oh, where to start? I worked in a cafe for a few years, and while there were some bad one-offs, the worst people were difficult regulars. There was one who would order the most popular thing on the menu, but with a list of modifications a mile long, right down to what fruit to include with the side of fruit and how many inches tall to pile the turkey on the sandwich. She would always get it to go, and then would about 50% of the time call the restaurant from home saying that the order wasn't correct and that she wanted a refund. However, my least favorite was this woman who would come in about an hour before closing and then stay until past closing, bugging you for little things piecemeal all the while. I get that at sit-down restaurants, customers can generally come in whenever they want, as long as the doors aren't locked yet, and then stay as long as they want. However, we were a small cafe, and I would kick everyone out when I locked the doors. She just wouldn't leave. Once she was on the phone when it was time for her to leave, lol. I ended up just shouting at her, loud enough for whoever was on the other line to hear, "It is time to leave the cafe now." People not wanting to leave was relatively common, although most people would leave right away when you asked. Once a woman just wanted to finish up one more thing on her computer. One more thing turned into one more thing, which turned into one more thing. She was sitting by the open window and there was no air conditioning in the cafe. So finally I just went and closed the window. She gave me the dirtiest look, but she got the fuck out lol. The first customer I described was my coworker's worst nightmare and he always made me deal with her since. While she was super annoying, I didn't mind as much. The people who wouldn't leave at the end of the day pissed me off so badly though. Worked fast food in high school. I've got a few. Man orders double cheeseburger with extra cheese and receives one with 4 slices instead of the usual 2. 2 minutes later, he is absolutely red in the face and screaming at the poor cashier. He's demanding to talk to the little shit that made his sandwich and asking if we think this is some kind of joke. Apparently, when he ordered extra cheese he wanted 1 extra slice, not 2. Some guy comes to the drive-thru and orders 4 fish sandwiches. We only had 2 pieces of fish cooked, and they were really close to their whole expiration time. Since we had to cook more anyway, my manager said to waste those 2, since they were old, and make all fresh ones for the customer. Guy comes up to the window and they ask him to pull forward, because it'll be a couple minutes. Meanwhile, we keep serving other cars. After a couple orders go out, this dude is in the lobby and asking for a manager. He is irate that we made him wait on his food while serving other people. The manager apologizes and explains the situation. Most people would be thrilled we didn't serve them old food, but for some reason, that just made this guy angrier. He starts yelling louder and then threatens my manager with physical violence over it. She asks him to leave and threatens to call the police. Dude storms out, slamming the door so hard he broke the latch and squeals his tires as he leaves the parking lot without his order. Never came back for it either. We had this regular who came in every Sunday morning and ordered the same thing, a side salad, supersize fries, and a happy meal for her grandkid. One day, the person who bagged her order put the salad and the fries in the same bag as we were trained to do. If you've never seen a supersize fry container, they're tall, and the side salad is in one of those little rectangular plastic things. So as you can imagine the fries fell over. For a normal person this is no big deal, but not for this lady. She needed new fries and a new salad, in separate bags this time. Of course the fries we had already made that came up 1 minute ago were not good enough, and she refused to leave or accept the new ones until we made a fresh basket.